Hello and welcome back, and that is right, we are revisiting the WD Black on PS5 SSD testing. We've got a whole bunch of games to make our way through in this video and one final video after this one. And as you can see, if we make our way in, the WD Black, we're using the 1TB model with the pre-attached heatsink. We've got 8 games on this SSD right now. We're only looking at 4 games in this video, with the other 4 games coming in the following video that should be with you in the next week or so. But today we are looking at Spider-Man Miles Morales, we are looking at LEGO Worlds, we're looking at Deathloop, and Call of Duty Warzone. We've removed as much internet and network connectivity as we think might be a problem, and as much as we can get away with the game still running. And all the way through this, we will be comparing the performance of the WD Black SN850 SSD and first-party heatsink against that of the internal PS5 SSD. Now, I'm going to load up Spider-Man Miles Morales here. I've already moved the games over. I've already done a whole video in the series. I think this is part 5 of the series of videos on the WD Black. We've already covered a great deal of ground here. So I'm not going to show you the transition of these games. I've already talked about that, and I recommend you watch the other videos. We're just going to get straight into the testing here. And again, in this game, we are going to be looking at 1, the loading of New York, 2, the frame rate, 3, the lighting effects, 4, texture drops, anything like that when we get close to areas. And then finally, we're going to do a fast travel test to move up to another whole area of the game here in Spider-Man Miles Morales. So let's go ahead. We're going to load my save here, and we're going to go in 3, 2, 1, go. Again, on screen there, you can see both the internal SSD on the top right and the WD Black on the top, the top left of the internal. On the top right is the WD Black. And as you can see straight away, we are using the full graphics mode here. We're using the mode of this game that shows off pretty much all of the graphics here, and we've loaded it down to 30 frames per second. There isn't an option to have both, but this at least allows us to take advantage of all of the extra graphical settings and make sure that the SSD is being taxed as hard as possible. Now, again, a number of you will probably wonder why I didn't go for the 60 frames per second mode, because surely speed is going to be key, and I agree with you, it is quite important. However, we aren't trying to bench test here the GPU or the CPU or the memory on the PlayStation 5. We are looking at the storage, and when it comes to storage, the best thing you can do is try to get the system to have to draw and read as much data as possible, as well as flushing the cache and deleting data on the fly, for which it's using in real time during loading screens and more. So again, that is mainly our ambition here, hence why we're going for the full graphical mode. But for the most part, things seem to be running beautifully fast here on this incredibly rapid game. And what I'm going to do now, we've moved through textures as quickly as we possibly can. And what we're going to do now is initiate a fast travel to another whole area of the map. So let's go ahead and grab ourselves a ledge. So let's go ahead and fast travel to the very top of the map. It's going to head straight up here, fast travel to the subway. We're going to go there in 3, 2, 1. Should be a very quick transition, and we can see Miles arriving on both scenes. So there we go. Again, that felt lovely and snappy there. That, again, I'll have to check in the post-production because I can only see the WD recorded footage here. But what I will say is it definitely felt like it was a pinch quicker on the WD Black, but I'll have to double check later on. Another thing I am keen to highlight as well while doing this is, as I'm sure as it says already on screen, the top left, the internal PS5 SSD test, that is being conducted and was recorded, I should say, using the internal PS5 recording software, whereas I'm using a capture card for the recording of the WD Black, because you can't keep recorded footage between games. If you used internal benchmark, it would remove a lot of the settings menus, and some of the windows and stuff that we navigate while doing these tests are blocked by the internal PS5 recording. So although I'm using the internal PS5 recording for the PS5 internal SSD, I am sticking with the capture card for SSD upgrades. But for now, let's end things, because I think there was absolutely nothing wrong with that one, and make our way into LEGO Worlds. Now, for those that aren't aware, LEGO Worlds is kind of a cross between No Man's Sky and Minecraft. This is kind of, we're going for the sandbox mode, where we've got a huge amount of freedom throughout the whole layout of the entire map as we go. And we're going to just be seeing how well the game deals with individual textures. We're going to be looking at other bits and bobs in the background. Ignore that beep, that's just me swapping discs out for the test coming after this, where we're going to look at Deathloop. But for now, we're going to make our way into Lego Worlds, and then from here, we're going to go ahead and, in Lego Worlds, go into the sandbox mode and pull in some assets and travel around the map and check out all the internal views. Let's go back into that while it loads that CD for our next test. You can ignore all that. I'm just saving you guys some time later. And again, we're not really looking at load time. This is a PS4 game here that we're looking at. We're not looking at a game that is designed with PS5 in mind, but we are still dealing with an open sandbox game that during the loading sequence, there's a good chunk of sequential data, but there's also a huge amount of small data to work through. And that's where SSDs with a high IOPS rating, like the WD Black's 1 million IOPS rating for sequential read, really show their true colours. And we're seeing consistently in all of these tests, the WD Black SN850, along with other SSDs like the Seagate Firecuda 530 and the Patriot Viper, SSDs that have got IOPS ratings at the 1 million mark are tending to open and load these open world games a great deal quicker, because they can pull those little tiny nuggets of huge collections of data much faster. But again, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself there. Let's make our way into the open sandbox area and create it for ourselves here, and then from here we'll see how well the WD Black does on this particular setup. So let's go ahead. We're going to create a random world. We want this random world to be the biggest possible world it can be. We're also going to introduce every single biome element all the way through. And as I say, as we go through this game, we're going to be traveling through some of the areas, but also switching between internal and external views, forcing the game to make sure that a lot of the sharper graphical assets are still maintained or pulled as necessary. So there we go, we've created our sandbox mode there. And again, you can probably make out there are other sandboxes created, but this is the one we're going for. So let's load in 3, 2, 1. So as you can see, again, top right, we've got the WD Black. Top left, we've got the internal SSD. Both of them are using offline resources only. There's no online play connectivity right now. And as once again we've seen, we want to see how open worlds load on these SSDs, because they're the ones where I think the complexity of IOPS really becomes a part of the conversation in terms of sequential read and random read on these drives. And of course, write we're going to largely ignore for the most part, at least as far as these tests are concerned. But we're making our way into the world. You can see this side by side, and I can't. But for now, we're making our way onto an area of the map, and it's loaded in the flat area. Don't worry, this isn't a case of the game not loading in assets. One of the biomes is indeed meant to be a flat, unpopulated area. So if we go ahead and load up a vehicle, so let's go ahead and go for something with an element of flight to it. For the hell of it, let's go for a helicopter there. Place that down. And you can already see what I mean by that draw distance there. The way the game introduces assets into the game, it's one of those ones where as you move around a game, it will slowly, phase by phase, invite some of those assets in. It's a real shame that the game has loaded in the flat terrain here, but we will start seeing elements very shortly as we make our way out of the flat zone. But again, it's so annoying that it's loaded into the flat bit, because I feel like this is almost an unfair test, given that this game has had to load in this empty area, which again is not, this isn't anything to do with the SSD not loading it in. One of the biomes is indeed a flat surface area, something this game has introduced in, and it's just happened to have introduced that randomly into this, and it's even deposited us on the edge of a better area. So we're seeing all of that loaded in there as we move in to a much more familiar biome there as we make our way in. If we use the inside view as well as we go. And again, we can, while leaving the game to go up, the game has still loaded in a lot of those close-up assets as well that we can look in between. So again, we can go down, maybe zoom out with that camera as we make our way through this world that we've created there gradually for all the different assets all around this Lego world. But again, for now, I think that's absolutely fine. We've not really seen anything problematic there in terms of what the game can do. And again, it's a real shame that it's dropped us into a relatively sparse area of the map, but I'm not going to change that. I'm going to stick with what the game has loaded for us as we make our way into the next test here of the next game. So the next game is Deathloop. We already put the CD in. Keep that fair. So let's make our way into Deathloop. And again, Deathloop, this is a single test. It's going to be a load test from the title screen. And what we're looking at here is to push the game as fast as we can and see if we can get the game to drop frame rate, get the game to have difficulty staying on top of assets as we go through it. Again, there is a shared kind of responsibility of a lot of these things that we do on here. So whether it's us looking at the likes of how the game handles the graphics, a lot of that's going to be GPU and CPU. But predominantly the reason we include these sort of tests here is super fast NVMe, particularly on PS5 games and particularly new gen PS5 only games. These are the ones where that super fast SSD becomes a pivotal part of the game's structure to be able to pull a lot of those visual assets as quickly as possible. But for now, let's make our way straight into the game in 3, 2, 1. Let's load in now. So we're making our way into Deathloop here. We're on the title screen and we'll start making our way through side by side. And lovely and quick loading there straight into this early stage of the game so we can start making our way through it. And again, we're not focusing too much on if our character dies because we can always respawn. What we're looking at here is to move as fast as we can through the game and force the game to have to do a lot of work. We want the game to work hard. And right now, we've got a bunch of enemies that are wondering who the hell I am as I run past them. So again, let's carry on moving forward. No doubt as I get pursued by bear. And again, move around. We've got more stuff to contend with there. And again, we can use the knife attack to get a little understanding there of some of the close-up textures as well. As we make our way through the game, it's going to be very important that we see just how much of the close-up textures still spawn in. Because one of the areas that again will cut corners, we saw this in Doom Eternal in terms of resource management, is often to only flick over to high-res assets graphically when you are near those elements where they are important. So again, we've died, so the game will let us respawn and immediately put us back. So we can carry on where we left off effectively. And again, we are looking at how well the game swaps out those assets for us in real time as we do this here. So again, there's our character's body. We can largely ignore that. We can carry on running through this map. But for now, I'm seeing no problems whatsoever with the way this game is handling a lot of what we're doing here. It's seemingly running at just the right speed for us there. And I'm seeing nothing that would make me think that the game is not able to handle this kind of game right now, pulling from that internal SSD. So I think for now, why don't we come out of this game and go into our final test, which is, of course, Call of Duty Warzone. And now in Call of Duty Warzone, we will be looking again at how quickly the game loads. There's a lot of secret loading in the opening, I have to say, but also there's a lot of kind of texture control in this game, so we're going to be looking at a lot of that. Now, this is a game that has to be run with online services. You can't play Warzone without the internet, which is super annoying. But at the same time, we can have a training mode that is only filled with bots, and that largely removes any element of online kind of random blockade that might happen during our test that can introduce an element that, you know, will askew some of the testing that we're doing between the internal SSD and this WD Black SN850. But for now, as the game loads in, let's make our way in one of the most painfully slow loadings there, as it pulls all that online information. And once again, what we want to do is go into the private mode, Battle Royale practice, and compare how these load and how they play side by side. So let's go in 3, 2, 1. Man, you can tell I've got a cough, can't you? So the game's loading in. So again, we're going to see the opening cinematic, which also utilizes a lot of in-game assets as well. It's not done as a pre-recorded FMV. On top of that, there's obviously going to be an element of draw distance when we jump out of the plane. All of that is stuff to look at. Although, of course, when it does a lot of this stuff, it's able to do it using low textures. It's not until we get up close and personal where the game has to swap those out. And this is a multi-platform game, so I'm not too concerned how this SSD will fare. I think this is kind of bread and butter for an SSD like this. And this game, all of the textures seem absolutely fine. There's no drop in frame rate, no issues that I can see at all as we make our way into the latter stages of this game here. Just looking around, everything seems fine. So again, we've got that whole TAC map thing, but it doesn't matter. All we're going to do is get ourselves down to ground level so we can go ahead and start seeing how well this game is going to play when running from the SN850. So let's jump out, and again we'll go for something nice and direct. We'll go for the rear of the map here. We'll maybe get out of the deadly gas, and of course the idea is we want to see how well this game is going to play off this SSD, not only in terms of general gameplay, but how well it is going to be in terms of frame rate and some of the textures that are going to be swapped in between. So again, I'll grab this guy's gun, whatever he has, because I'm going to find that useful, because let's face it, we're already massively low down. Okay, brilliant. It's a fairly slow shotgun there that's going to have to rely on close quarters combat, but let's start this by making our way through some of the denser areas of the map. Let's go ahead and go and stay close quarters while we make our way through. And the idea is just to keep an eye on these textures as we move all the way around as well, because we want to make sure that we're not going to miss out on low texture polys as we move through, the lighting effects too. And we want to ensure that everything we're seeing so far is running at the best it can be. At the moment, this is running smooth as custard. I'm seeing no problems whatsoever here in terms of the game's playback. I think right now, I think it would be very hard to say that there was any problems you're seeing here on screen. The frame rate certainly is, you know, unchanged all the way what we're doing. And again, this is a PS4 original game, but that still doesn't mean that the SSD can't be problematic in terms of IOPS and response. It's also worth highlighting that I am utilizing this capture card, which causes the tiniest delay in what I do and what you see on screen. The result is that a lot of the time I won't be able to hit an enemy or press a button at the same time that I'm seeing it on screen, which is super duper annoying. But nonetheless, I think we can call this a success. I think this has run as well as it can do. I'm going to let this guy probably kill me before I can load the pitiful 30 rounds into this MG. But for now, let's go back to the main user interface of the PS5 and start moving these games back onto the internal SSD and sort of evaluate everything we've seen today, because right now, once again, unsurprisingly, the WD Black SN850 is still just absolutely holding up for what the way it plays and the way it handles games. So if we move those, bearing in mind we're only moving over those 4 games we've tested today, we've still got Rocket League, Ghost of Cinema, Marvel Spider-Man's Remastered, and Last of Us 2 for the next test. So stay tuned for that next video coming hopefully in the next few days. But let's move those over. Let's be honest, the games have run exactly as well as we thought they would. There are a small contingent of SSDs that I've been testing over the last month and a half that just generally always hit top marks. That's your Firecuda 530s, your Sabrent Rocket 4s, and of course this WD Black. The Samsung 980 again is another great SSD, which Sadly, I know a number of you have highlighted the capacity that I've been utilising, and I am upping that for future videos. But still, nonetheless, even in higher capacities of 4 and 1 TB, most users have admitted that the performance of it is still not matching that of some of the other big guns out there. The architecture of the WD Black SN850 is still easily some of the best out there. One of the reasons being it's an in-house SSD that also arrives at probably one of the most well-priced tiers in the market right now compared to other PCIe Gen 4 M.2 NVMe's available right now. And even though a number of you might be watching this video because you're wondering if the WD Black's the right choice, chances are, if you're up to this video, you must already have noticed that this SSD has rarely failed at anything, and it's only been in fractional drops compared to some of our SSDs in some of our extensive testing, where it may not have won the day, but for the most part it has. And for a number of you out there, I think that's enough, particularly with that price point too. Do stay tuned for that final test after this, where we're looking at the WD Black with those 4 other games, and of course we have another whole round of comparisons coming before the end of November, so stay tuned for that. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Click like and if you've enjoyed this video. It helps me know what I'm doing right and how to make these videos better every time. And of course, click subscribe and the bell to be notified when the next video in this series comes up, and of course when the big face-offs happen, so stay tuned for those. There's a buy button, I should say a buy link in the description that will take you towards this SSD, and again, if you can use that, it's always appreciated. It won't cost you anything extra and it helps me keep these videos going. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.